The front page of the Herald Sun this morning. Fresh claims that residents in aged care homes have starved for days. They've been unwashed, left in soiled sheets. That's just one story. What's your reaction to that?
Oh, Pete, good morning, mate. It's obviously really disturbing to hear some of those stories coming out of aged care providers. I think that this is a crisis and this is a really stressful time for families. I've got a family member in residential aged care, and to hear those sorts of stories, I know for those families would be really stressful. Yeah. What's important now is to make sure that these services get the care and the expertise and the attention that they deserve. And unfortunately, this is something that it's really disappointing, but not that surprising. We've known for a long time that the care in many of our aged care services is inadequate. It's why the Prime Minister himself in 2018 called the Aged Care Royal Commission. This is something that has been around for a while, and we need to fix it, and we need to fix it quickly.
It feels like we haven't learnt the lessons of Newmarch House, though. 19 people dying, 19 elderly residents dying, I should say, in the first spike of this outbreak. And yet, here we are again. It's the same problems, isn't it? Have we not learned the lessons?
Well, you're spot on, Pete. And it's not just Newmarket, it's also right around the world. Unfortunately, this coronavirus affects older people in a far more severe way, and throughout the United States, throughout other countries where there's been significant breakouts, the people that have suffered the most is our aged care services. And so I think the warning signs have been there. I think that the federal government has probably known for a while that more action needs to be taken to support our workers and our staff who are, in many cases, completely overrun and underpaid. And we need to make sure that every support possible is given to our aged care services and to our residents in them.
Is there a problem now emerging? I mean, you bring up a fair point then, and it's a common point that's being shared too, that many workers in the sector are underpaid. Now, the workers in aged care are going to be getting paid pandemic leave to take some time off if they're not feeling well. They might have the virus. But that creates another problem, doesn't it? Because then there's not enough staff members to look after the vulnerable.
It does, but the most important thing is if someone's unwell, we can't have them walking into these aged care services. Sure. That has to be the priority, and unfortunately, the organisational task of trying to get people to replacement is difficult, but it is necessary. And we need to make sure that workers are not walking into these services, because if they do it, it is a disaster, as we can see.
So does that highlight the point? I mean, Greg Hunt referred yesterday to a crack team, a crack medical team now, who's going into these aged care centres to kind of help out. Is that too late?
Look, I don't think that pointing the finger is particularly useful. What we need is to fix this issue and to make sure that these services have the resources that they need. And as I said to you before, Pete, this is something that we've known for a while. This is something that Scott Morrison himself admitted when he called the Royal Commission into aged care services because of the inadequacy of care, the inadequacy of expertise, the inadequacy of training. These are long systemic issues in our aged care services that fall within the responsibility of the federal government. So I would just say that, look, right now we need to deal with it. There are families that are stressed and devastated by the treatment of their loved ones. I haven't seen my grandma in almost 6 months. It is really difficult for families. And we need to make sure that we fix it quickly, and the long-standing issues in our aged care sector are dealt with as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and you're right. Well, I mean, it's the state government. Daniel Andrews pointing the finger at the federal government, and you got Greg Hunt pointing the finger back at the state government yesterday for the quarantine breaches at the hotel. So, what does that all say to you?
Look, it's obviously a stressful time. There's no doubt about it. This coronavirus is testing everyone and testing everyone's patience. I think that the Victorian government has, and especially the Premier has, done a stoic job of standing up in front of the media every single day and making sure that not a question that wanted to be put to him doesn't get answered and doesn't get his accountability on. Now, obviously, the health minister is been working hard as well, and I absolutely acknowledge that. And I think what people want to hear and what people have been impressed with so far is the collaboration between different levels of government. And and we need to take a big deep breath and get back to that as quickly as possible.
Josh, any of these aged care centres where there have been outbreaks in your electorate?
Not as yet, I don't believe, Pete.
Yeah.
And we're hoping to keep it that way. We do. It's not just aged care services that I'm really focused on and nervous about. We do have a lot of public housing as well, a lot of vulnerable people in those high rises as well. So we've been in constant contact with the Department of Health and Human Services in Victoria. We're distributing sanitizer this week. We're really trying to be as helpful as we can to make sure that people locally get all of the support and protection that they can.
I know you don't want to point the finger, and you're obviously a supporter of Daniel Andrews as well. But should he have, cancelled elective surgery earlier to free up staff to be sent into these aged care centres?
Look, I don't have the request in front of me. It wasn't made to me. You'll be surprised that Scott Morrison doesn't run these things past me. I'm happy for him too, but he doesn't.
But broadly speaking.
Yeah, look. My understanding is that the request was made early Monday and that it was acted on by Tuesday. So that's a pretty good turnaround. Obviously, these are issues that have been canvassed for a long time in the aged care sector. I think, instead of getting lost in the sort of pointing the finger saga, what we need to do is make sure that the people who are in residential aged care get support. We need to focus. We need to be focused on saving Victorian lives. I think the Victorian government has been doing that, remarkably so far in trying to put downwards pressure on this really slippery virus. We're seeing it pop up all around the country after weeks of no new cases in Queensland. Today there's a new case. This is a really difficult thing to manage. And we need to just make sure that we're focused on saving lives.
Just finally, a complete change of topic, Josh, but the Osmin talks, there's an interesting debate that's emerging here at the moment. Our ministers, not necessarily going there today, but whether we should be venturing to within 12 nautical miles of these disputed areas in the South China Sea. Should we be doing that? Just heard from ASPI, Michael Shubich, who said we should because it will halt their territorial advances. What's your position on that?
Yeah, good question, Pete. I heard the Defence Minister give a briefing this morning, and some of the specific requests weren't made public by the Defence Minister. So it's sort of difficult for me to comment on some of the specifics that were asked or discussed between Marise Payne and her counterpart Mike Pompeo. I would say that broadly Labor has for a long time supported the principles of freedom of navigation and freedom of movement, especially in trade routes. We need to be engaging with China. We don't have a choice. It is the biggest player in our region, and we need the United States to be doing its part as well. And I think that yesterday, when Penny Wong spoke about what we would like to see from these discussions, we absolutely acknowledged how important they are, that this opportunity is crucial. But we also wanted the United States not just to have a military presence in our region, but also to have an ongoing political presence as well. And that can take shape in things like the rollout of a potential vaccine of this coronavirus. It can take place in making sure that trade discussions between nations are as fair as possible, including for Australia. So these are complicated issues. These are ones that the Labor Party will come back to formally throughout the day, especially around the specifics of the South China Sea. But I think in principle, we need to make sure that there is freedom of navigation, freedom of movement, especially in trade routes. And it's absolutely in Australia's interest to be engaging with all parties to ensure that.
Complicated issues in quite complicated times, it's fair to say. Josh, thank you so much. Good to get your thoughts.
Good to be with you, mate.
We'll talk to you soon. Well, China has accused